Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sustainability Summit 2022. Thank you very much for tuning in. We have just come from a power-packed conversation around developing sustainable smart cities, and we just kick-started the segment of food security, speaking about the ocean economy. Now it's getting real hectic and real deep. We're talking agriculture. And without further ado, let me welcome my esteemed panel of guests. We have Mr. Chris Muyenda, who's the Principal Business Mentor at AAIN. We have Ms. Gabby Malope, who's Director and Principal at Tuateli Agriculture College, South Africa. We also have Nonhlanhla Joy, who is the CEO of Ungibe Farming Organics. She is logging in from Ethiopia, so she should be joining us shortly. We have Sikoli Semgcinga, who's a senior analyst at Sustainable Agriculture Green Cape. We also have Hampi Bapila, who's head of agro-processing and agriculture at the Industrial Development Corporation, IDC, which is one of our lead sponsors for the Sustainability Summit. We also have Nomkhulu Kovic, Dr. Nomkhulu Kovic, who's a Director General Representative to Ethiopia, and she will be joining us shortly as well. Thank you so much to all of you for taking the time to have such a critical discussion in this day and age and in this economy. Apparently, by 2030, if we are not part of the value chain of agriculture, we'll all be starved. So kickstarting the conversation would be you, Mr. Muyenda. Chris, over to you, and welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be part of this very important meeting with all its various seminars so far that you have started. We have enjoyed them, and they're all very well linked. You know, we have just moved from the ocean economy. We have now come into the real agriculture, real agribusiness on the land. And in order for us to be sustainable, and in this case, actually sustainability can be interchanged with competitiveness. In order for us to be competitive in the future, it is very important, I think, to ensure that we have, number one, appropriate policies for the sector. The policies for the sector in any given country, very crucial for sustainability, for competitiveness into the future. Number two, it is very important that the producers of agricultural products have a clear market. They must be able to see where the market is now, where the market will be in the future. Number three area, very important for sustainability, for competitiveness, is the issue of the technologies, the agricultural technologies that we are employing, be it irrigation, be it water capture, be it any technology within the value chain of agriculture, which is meant to sustain the sector going forward. Technology is very key. I think a key issue, which is important also outside the environment, is finance. What will be the finance for the agricultural sector? What will be the source of finance to maintain this sector, to ensure it is competitive into the future? What are the different sources of finance? So I think those are the four key pillars I would like to expand on as we go on in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muyenda. Actually, you just laid the foundation for our conversation, so truly appreciated. Can we have Gabby?
Good day, everyone. It's so interesting that we're working at the very particular time where we need to also be discussing the power in agriculture right now, because it does really affect our economy at this point, and of course production in many levels. My name is Gabby Malope. I'm the founder and director of Total Agriculture College, and currently sitting as the principal for academics. And it's been in existence for the past 8 years, and I'm accredited with AgriCETA, and we are participating in a rural space, so we are more of a rural agriculture college. This is where we're tapping into indigenous farming, but moreover, we have now adapted indigenous farming to hybrid technology combination to attain the sustainability, of agriculture beyond what we currently know. So I'm quite excited to be here because this is a platform where we're going to explore each other, and actually even an honor to have Mr. Chris here today, so that we can learn from each other.
Thank you, Gabi.
Thank you very Thanks, Mamulupe. Absolutely looking forward to also finding out more of what your agricultural college does and the initiatives you are involved in. Thank you. Xolise?
Thank you so much, Tabi, for this amazing opportunity. I'd like to greet everyone today and also highlight that it is an honor to be part of such an important discussion, really discussing global challenges such as food security. My name is Xolise Mcinga. I work as a senior analyst at Green Cape, particularly focused on the sustainable agriculture sector. So Green Cape is a nonprofit organization which drives the widespread adoption of economically viable green economy solutions. So we basically work at the interface of businesses, investors, government, and academia to help unlock investment as well as job creation opportunities in the green economy space. So part of our mandate as the Sustainable Agriculture team is really looking at creating pathways or the right environment for stakeholder engagements, information dissemination, as well as promotion of investments within the space. And also to ensure that agriculture, sustainable agriculture that is basically at the core of conversations such as this one. Because we do understand that sustainable agriculture is the result, or it will be the future for social upliftment, for poverty alleviation, for increased productivity within the agri-sector and the whole value chain, and as well as economic growth, and therefore yield the important topic that we're talking about today, which is food security.
Thank you very much for that. Key point is that you mentioned there, particularly around social upliftment, poverty alleviation in the context of food security. So we look forward to engaging further with you on that. Mr. Kampi?
Good morning, everyone, and thanks also for giving us an opportunity to be part of this very important conversation. My name is Hampi Babela from the IDC. I'm heading the Agro-Processing and Agriculture Strategic Business Unit. IDC is one of the probably oldest DFIs in the world. We celebrating 82nd birthday this year in October. And agriculture is also one of the key sectors. Not only because it's important for our economy, but also its ability for creating sustainable jobs. You would have noticed that even during COVID, this is the only sector that maintained growth. Actually, is the one that carried our economy. And as the previous speakers have already mentioned, it's important that we continue to fund and expand. Without funding, we may talk about these things, but also in funding, we have to start finding innovative funding solutions, not only looking at the conventional way of doing things, but also the technology, funding of technology, but also looking at alternative ways of farming, especially intensive methods, urban farming, vertical farming and all that, because we're having challenges of changes in climate change. It's difficult to even predict the rainfall patterns and all that. And as a country, we are a water scarce country, so we need to start thinking about all different alternative methods. But with that, it also means that as financiers, we also have to adapt and start thinking of creating new innovative solutions to address this. Thank you.
100%. Thank you, Dr. You've mentioned a critical aspect there. What are the alternative methods that we can explore to agriculture? I mean, we are now able to grow, vegetables on balconies, for example. I'm going to ask a very basic question, ladies and gentlemen, and it's going to be posed to all of you. But we'll start with you, Chris. Why are people hungry when we have agricultural capabilities across the continent, across the country?
Thank you very much. Yeah, exactly. And that is really the perplexing question, which is self-inflicted upon ourselves. People are hungry because the sum total of agricultural policies is not right. Okay, if we have the right policies, and one of the key policies is that we must keep the continent open. Today, we have the so-called African Free Continental Trade Area.
Yeah.
The key commodities we are supposed to put in the trade pipelines in that African Continental Free Trade Area are agricultural commodities.
100%.
Africa is a large continent with various agroecological zones. We can grow everything we want
100%.
because North Africa is different from Southern Africa, West Africa is different from East Africa, and the center is different. And each one of them has different capabilities to support different agricultural commodities. So our agricultural policies have to be linked on openness to be able to move our commodities around the continent and feed everyone. So a key area for all our leaders to look at is that we have one Africa. It must be open. No one should go hungry because the continent is able to produce everything it needs on itself. So that's the key area around policy. So the issues of import-export bans of what should be looked at. We should move around our agricultural produce on the continent, enjoy what Africans can produce, what our God-given continent has been given to produce. Let it be given around the continent, and let stakeholders, no one should go hungry. So that's one key area, and it's very important for all the policymakers to be sensitized to this issue. There are aspects, there are rules that we have to follow when we move around agricultural commodities, because we don't want to be distributing pests and diseases and so on. So there are rules in doing this. We have to work together, okay, to make sure we are able to control the pests and diseases as well, and that those are not hindering agricultural trade. Thank you.
That's correct. Thank you very much for that. Gary, you want to come in there? You are teaching in your college a lot around indigenous farming. Why do you think people are hungry? I mean, you're exposed to these communities that you're trying to teach, but most of them are exposed to poverty. Why are people hungry?
Quite interesting. And sorry, I think being in the ground levels, I have also identified quite a number of contributing factors. Number one being you find a livestock farmer in the Eastern Cape who has so many sheep. That is wealth, according to me, because we classify them under assets. But the challenge they're having is to name the sheep, give them ancestry names. That is now the indigenous part, which is not spoken to us. And it's so difficult for them to take these animals to processing to become, revenue for them and for their survivalists. And then you get another farmer who is actually doing so well, doing so well in livestock farming, but the money is actually transferred to other things. You have somebody who's staying in Joburg who actually is your business or even multiplying it. Then you come to your crop farmers. Our South African landscape has now become so much diluted that every farming activity that our government brings or exposes us to, everyone runs to it. They forget the traditional farming practices, which is just producing firstly for livelihood. And they are hungry not because there are no resources. Remember, South Africa or Africa, I would say Africa as a whole, it's a landscape for natural resources. You look for gold, you find it here. You look for any type of crop. You know, we are the only people who still can take cassava and you know, have the roots and the leaves. So, but we're not seeing that. We also have a challenge of giving away what we currently having for something less. I was actually evaluating how much we are rebuying the product which have been harvested here in South Africa, go to other countries apart from Africa, and coming back to us to actually generate more money. But this is agricultural products which we are now have to sell back to our very own people, and also make them, you know, not sell the crops that we are producing here. I'm still checking which door are they living in, because they end up coming to us as, you know, products processed, and they no longer even carry the same weight. You'll remember when Moringa came in, it was a buzz. Moringa came in, it was a buzz. Everyone stopped farming vegetables, wanted to do Moringa. And then not so long, there was cannabis. Everybody stopped doing spinach, but they want to do cannabis. The challenge again is that we are not ready for the process, because in order for you to start producing cannabis, you must be a very good vegetable farmer, understanding climate and seasons. Then you can be processed to this, you know, high products which are being, you know, brought to us. That is something that I am seeing, and also not to see us and cross-pollination of products. I still want to go to the furthest place to get a product when we can actually produce locally and, you know, omit a whole lot of expenditure channel. So this is something that we are having. We need just a mind shift. That's what we need. But South Africa, Africa, and other, you know, continents of Africa, we're carrying so much weight with natural resources. We're the only ones who still enjoy our crops that are not even with, you know, hasty chemicals. You've got forest that still produces natural fruits. Every December, there's wild fruits, which we could be harvesting and working on the way to restore them. And we still have the opportunity to replant some of the products that we're having. I'll make an example. We are currently producing tea from our indigenous trees, which are naturally busted from the soil, and they are not owned by anyone. But we're producing that tea and it's hitting the market. We got it to be in commercial market. So this is some of the things that we have natural resources. The most important thing is to shift the mind and put it together, package it so that it sustains, and we just break away from the systemic poverty that we are in line with. But I think we need mind shift. That's very important.
Abby, you've raised something so critical, and just from what you're saying, something that conjures my thought is we are exactly what we need to get out of poverty. There is no one else, there is nothing else, there is no government or institution that can get us out of hunger, but we can. So what do we have in our hands? And up until we realize what we have in our hands and channel it to the utilization aspect, then we can go for. Thank you very much for saying agency. We've got it. We want to explore more of that. Kolise, why are we hungry?
Wow, it's such a mind-blowing question, and also to think that the answer really lies within us to really identify exactly why we are hungry. I mean, just trying to unpack this topic, obviously I did a bit of research to really understand why are we even talking about food security or food insecurity thereby in Africa when we are so well vested with natural resources. And I'd like to highlight exactly what Gabby was mentioning before, that it's really a mindset thing. It's really a situation where we need to identify how we can move or really capture the primary production side of agricultural production, and therefore shift things towards like the correct processing methodologies, and then really identifying the technologies that are supposed to be linked within all of that processing value chain, and then go as far as packaging our ideas, packaging our products, and making sure that we commercialize. Because a lot of the times, most of our primary production is just left at subsistence level, especially if we're talking about your subsistence farmers, whilst the commercial farmers, on the other hand, are flourishing, and they're the ones who are setting the price, who are setting the standards for commodities. And therefore now it becomes a lot more inaccessible because we don't want to integrate ourselves within this whole value chain and within this whole production system in agriculture. So I do think that I would like to highlight very much about what Gabby was mentioning around mindset. So if we do change that, I do see Africa as a successful story, really. And also one of the things that I also like to highlight that Moyanda mentioned is really around policy and how flawed the whole system is. I think part of the reason is that a lot of the times we develop policies in response to a crisis. It's never a proactive approach to policy making. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. You hear people talking about the sugarcane master plan, for an example, and it's in response to a crisis. You hear us talking about the poultry master plan, for an example, and it's always in response to a crisis. It's not setting up the correct policies in place that integrate the whole system from your primary production all the way to the end product, and making sure that we incorporate all of these things before responding to a crisis. I think that is one of the other reasons that is making us hungry.
Sure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the point you made around policy as a response to crisis, not even as a response to development. So thank you very much for that. We'll explore that further. Mr. Mapila, with all the alternative methods that the IDC is investing in, why are people still hungry?
Yeah, thanks for that. I have a few points and I'll expand on all of them. The first thing is, it's not because we don't have sufficient food. We produce enough. It's one is access, and I think Mr. Myunda's touched on that. Access in that all African economies, agriculture, it plays a very significant role in terms of the economy. But the reason why we then resort to protectionist mechanisms is because we also do not have uniformity in terms of regulations. So you would find that South Africa is having its own standards. Another country does not have, others do have, but then now the question is, whose standards are you going to be using? If you an African country, you wanted to trade with EU, you're not going to deal with individual countries, you're dealing with a bloc. They've sort of harmonized their regulations, but now for us, for the free trade to work, we need to first deal with those. But we could also deal, while we still solving the regulatory environment, we could also look at obviously the issue of preservation. I mean, just most of these produce that products that we're producing obviously are seasonal. But how do we then make sure that we preserve them? Because especially for those who produce for sustenance, how do they make sure that they can still have the same produce throughout the year? So we need to be maybe helping and investing in preservation methods. But again, going back to issue of access, if I give example of South Africa, like subtropical areas, if you look at, say, Limpopo, that produces most of these fresh produce that you find in our major markets, fresh produce markets. So a typical, a middle class, if I can use that word, in Limpopo, will pay a little bit more than somebody who's in Joburg for veggies, because these veggies will travel from Limpopo to Joburg to be packed and travel for another 300 to 400 kilometers back to Limpopo to be on the shelf in some retail store. So that person will be paying a little bit more for something that is not so fresh. So that's the reality that we're facing. So we need to start looking at different ways of doing things. But the other thing that was also mentioned by one speaker, it's the unique microclimates. South Africa is a country, we have unique microclimates. Now, if you take the continent, we will be having different windows for different produce. So in working together, we can be able to also make sure we alleviate this challenge. Issues of regional integration. If I give example, now South Africa, we're struggling with the prices of feed for animal feed, especially the protein component, because of the war that's taking place. You've seen the price of cooking oil, because the protein part, which is oil cake, it's a byproduct of production of cooking oil. So you then look at, say, a country like Zambia as an example. The environment is favorable for soybean production, while South Africa is leading in the region in production of poultry. Why not have a negotiation with Zambia? You produce the soybean. We invest in the crushing of it. We import it to South Africa, so we're not dominating by just product moving one way, one direction. We bring your oil cake to South Africa. We feed to our, we push it through our poultry industry. We then sell you chicken. So it's a win-win. Zambia would have sent South Africa something that is processed, so it's value added. South Africa will also have sent something back to Zambia that is value added. So everyone wins. There is no big brother thing. There is no, then we'll have these issues of border being closed for some of the food products being done away with. So we need to, as countries, look at our comparative advantage. Look at what we're good at and stick to that. Then the other country also does what they're good at, but then we then trade on that basis.
100%. A key point that you've added there is comparative advantage, and I think I love the term "big brother," because Africa trades with the rest of the world. It's an egocentric transaction, and it's very unfortunate that with a lot of African countries, we recognize trade only when it's with, exporting to the European market or exporting to the West, but not amongst each other. So going back to you, Mr. Muyunda, how do we, can we then go into the political issues that are affecting access to markets? Because we have a market, but it's not as clear as it should be. Even the African Free Continental Trade Agreement has this renaissance going on. It's a $1.4 billion market, or $1 trillion market when they calculate it. What are the political nuances that are affecting access to a clear market?
Yes, so this is really key. We have to have the will at the highest level to ensure that our aspiration to have one continent, one market actually works. Are you still hearing me?
Yes, indeed.
Yes, okay.
Yes, indeed.
You disappeared briefly, but I can see you
I
now.
did.
Yeah. Yes. So we have the aspiration to be able to create one market, the African continental market. But
Sure.
within, for that continental market to work, we have to ensure everybody knows the rules. And somebody, I think, talked about the issue of standards. So the fact that we are one does not mean that we should be selling rubbish to each other. No. We have to sell, number one, safe, nutritious foods around the continent.
Yep.
So it is important that our producers, smallholder farmers, SMEs, traders are capacitated in terms of the standards of the commodities that we are going to trade in. So if it is cassava, okay, cassava, we can use the leaf, we can use the root, we can use the tuber, okay? But when we want to trade it, we have to understand exactly in what form the tuber is required in Tanzania, in what form the tuber is required in Malawi, okay? What should be its content of water? The tuber has a lot of water. What should be the amount of water in there for it to be acceptable, okay? Some of these commodities, if they have too much water, they will go bad after a while. So to cut a long story short, standards, it is very important to capacitate our communities, our people, in terms of the quality standards that are required for all the tradable commodities. We produce so many commodities, okay? We talked earlier about the issue of value addition, agro-processing. So if an agro-processing industry is located in South Africa, because people, in order to eat, do not just require agricultural commodities. Sometimes they require money, they require finance to have access to the commodities grown by others. But if the agricultural commodities are going to be moved to a factory, we have to ensure, one, our people understand the standards required by that factory. Our people have to understand the issues of what is going to happen at the border for the commodity to be able to cross. Because even if we are one continent, we still have 55 member states. So it is very important. I think a key area also, we are talking about agro-processing, but also even technologies for adding value at the farm level, so that we can get more from our commodities. The technologies, there are various technologies, simplified technologies that can be used to get more out of our maize, to get more out of our cassava, to add value, so we can produce more products, and the people are able to get not just food, but also money to buy other requirements for developing their farms. Thank you.
100%. Xolisa, I think maybe you can come in here, just with the, as an analyst, and looking at different sustainable agricultural activities that could, ensure there's better production and efficacy and so forth. How do we ensure good agricultural practices to ensure sustainability?
Thank you very much, Tabi, for that. Yes, there's quite a lot of R&D that is happening in the space, and I think one of the very important things to highlight is that South Africa is really spending a lot of time really investing in technologies to improve agricultural production. And some of the methods that have been identified, especially for crop production at the moment, is your regenerative agricultural practices. And this includes your conservation agriculture, this includes your organic farming practices, and particularly looking at also the benefits of venturing into these farming technologies. Now we're talking about carbon trading, where we're talking about carbon sequestration. So all these practices that result or improve carbon sequestrations, and then people not only get value for like the crop value, a good produce out of a good farming practices, but then now they also can tap into the carbon trading market, which really looks into like paying farmers for good agricultural practices. So it's one of the things that we have been seeing going on and really improving the uptake of sustainable agricultural practices here in South Africa.
Okay, thank you very much. Perhaps Mr. Kambi, you can just extend on that, because Sikolisi touched on technology. What are the types of technology that the ITC has funded, particularly for farmers or the agricultural sector? And then we'll have Gabi come in with some of the aspects there.
Thanks. The intensive agriculture, obviously the issue land is it's a very it's a problematic issue, but also with maybe thanks to also climate change, it's almost sort of forces us to adopt these technologies. So we see a lot of urban farming where people are able to produce more in confined spaces, but because of controlled environment, they can be able to produce throughout the year. So that's what we've been able to fund, especially also the vertical farming. It's a new thing. Unfortunately, at this stage, you can only produce mostly the leafy type vegetables, because you can't have melons, for example, hanging on those trellises. So, but yeah, we open to that. But not only that, what we also looking at, there is drone technology where if you're having 1,000 hectares, you cannot be able to walk through the fields and checking whether the application of fertilizer has been even and all that. So the use of it may be indirect, that is not directly into agriculture, but the drone technology and all that, where within an hour or so, clear pictures can, high densities, sort of pictures can be taken and can be analyzed quickly to check where the intervention is required on the field. And this is not only for large scale players, it can also be for, we're seeing other, especially intermediaries who contract small scale farmers, using apps where a farmer can go and take a picture, and there is a quick analysis of what sort of nutrients are lacking on the crop, and with that the intervention can be made as soon as possible. But we're seeing, talking about intensive agriculture, if you look at things like berries, the use of the irrigation as well, where you're having precision farming, water only on demand. You're not just irrigating because every day at 9 o'clock or at 6 o'clock you're supposed to be irrigating, but you're using probes that will then be able to determine the moisture level content around the root system, and water will only go where it's required. And we're going to be forced to adopt this if we are to continue to produce going into the future, because of these erratic climatic conditions that we experience. And even for small scale farmers, I mean, with advancement in tech must have gone through, they can be able to take advantage and move, fast track and move and adopt these new technologies. You look at a country like Holland, with more than 400 people per square kilometer, they don't have land and they are below sea level. But when coming to fresh produce, they feed in Western Europe. Why can't we do that with our unique microclimate? So we still have the advantage where we can still have open field agriculture and still also have augmented with the use of greenhouses and all that.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Mapela. Truly insightful, especially with some of the case studies. Like, as you said, with Holland, Africa is larger than, European countries in terms of land and so forth. But once again, it goes back to those nuances around the finance, the technology, and that Chris mentioned earlier on. Gabby, maybe you can come in here. What is the key curriculum or the key principles that you teach in your college? And have you guys had the opportunity to integrate technology as well as part of the agricultural development? Hi, Gabi, are you still with us? Oh, she's not here. Oh my. Okay, didn't see her jump off. Maybe let's go back to Olise. Have you guys worked with any agricultural colleges or with small scale farmers as Green Cape?
Yes, not only just Green Cape, but there's I enjoy watching just how R&D is trying to incorporate, especially your small scale farmers. So that's one of the things that have been happening in the space. And to also add on to what Hampi was talking about around controlled environment agriculture, there's also a lot of interest in your aquaponics at the moment and the whole technology around aquaponics, which is a very nice circular system, very controlled, which also improves not just your crop production now, but also then improves it also provides the protein element of things, because now if you're going to farm both vegetables, for an example, and fish, then now it's a whole combined system, then that's a whole meal there. So it's one of the things that have been really happening in the space. And then what is also interesting to watch is seeing how these agricultural colleges are really trying to set up capacity building courses and really try to disseminate information for especially to people who want to get into the space of agricultural production, and really looking into these new and emerging technologies or advanced ways or different ways of even agricultural production. So we have been also seeing that in the space, particularly targeting your women, unemployed youth in the space. So yes,
100%. Perhaps Chris, you can come in there just to extend from what Olise has said, and also just the aspect of finance. Can we also touch, because it's a very capital dense industry and space, and most of the time people have the space but they don't have the resources. So how can we better support each other and create local communities? Because I must be honest, Pick n Pay can sell whatever it sells, but I don't see the value of Pick n Pay if people have gardens and they are planting different things, or they have farms and they're planting different things. It just needs a communal system to build that regional economy. So maybe just add more comments on that and we'll go to our closing remarks thereafter.
Thank you. So basically, I think the key point is that our food that we produce, it's not just food for us to eat. It is food for us to establish businesses. This is our biggest comparative advantage. And so even with the training colleges, they should teach agriculture, but more they should teach business. I think they should teach what is called nowadays business incubation, focusing on agribusiness and bringing in particular young people. It is a disaster that this continent should be having such very high levels of unemployment when we are sitting with so much agricultural potential. We should be able to develop different types of businesses from the different commodities that can produce different products. Cassava has thousands of products, from starch to all kinds of things. Maize, we can make so many things from maize, from which we can get money to buy other foods that we need. So what is crucial is really to change the mentality in terms of looking at this great agricultural potential. And recently, I think the president of the ADB said, we cannot eat potential. What we can eat is the business that we generate from this potential. So it is very important that we are developing sustainable agribusinesses from our agricultural potential. in particular with a big focus on adding value. Each one of our agricultural commodities can produce so many other things. So we should train our young people. I think we should look at the aspect of various agribusiness incubators focusing on modern agribusiness to be able to expand products from the various commodities that we can grow on this continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now entering the closing phase. Unfortunately, so unfortunate, because we can go on. I think this topic alone needs an entire conference, because the value chain in agriculture is huge. It is vast. And I love what you said, Mr. Muyunda, that we cannot leave potential. And we've been relying on potential for so long. We've been hopeful. It's now time for us to engage aggressively with policy decision makers, with institutions, to hold them accountable, to say that, we have the space, but you have the frameworks. How can we come together and work concomitantly to make sure that this marriage is successful? Can we have your closing remarks, Sikolisa, and perhaps last sentiments that you want to contribute? And we'll go to Mr. Bapila, and then we'll come back to you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tabi. But I think from what I've gathered from this interesting session is that agricultural sustainability rests on the principle that, of course, we must meet the needs for today without compromising the needs for the generations to come. That is the first thing. But also, we must, in all of this agricultural sustainability, we must integrate environmental health, which is very important. And we must also not shy away from talking about economic profitability and as well as social equity. So we can achieve all of these things by leveraging on public and private sectors, as well as universities and other institutes for expertise and training capacity, to ensure that we are driving the conversation of food security forward, especially in the context of our African country, which is well vested in natural resources. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sikolise. That was absolutely profound. Thank you. Mr. Bapila?
Thanks. Indeed, this was a very interesting discussion. I agree that we needed more time to really go deeper into it. But just to Sikolisile's point, and I know she spoke earlier about the reactive nature and how we respond to when coming to policy. But I think we need to be intentional in doing that, especially if we are to make this Africa free trade a success. And there are a few examples on the continent where this was done. A country like Cote d'Ivoire, when they received independence, they obtained independence, they decided they were going to be leaders in certain commodities, cocoa being one of them, palm oil being one of them, rubber being one. And to date, they are still leaders in that space, except for palm, which they happen to have shared with the current leader, which is Malaysia. They shared the knowledge, and Malaysia, because of maybe favorable environment, they are leading. But the sad thing is that the processing, the value add part of it hasn't happened. And that's where we could, as Africans, now start cooperating, maybe South Africa, Nigeria, another country.
Sure.
We start investing in that country and helping them to start value adding processing instead of sending out only beans to Europe for them to bring them back to us as chocolate. And talking about cooperation, and this was, by the way, master plans. They had master plans. They may not have called them master plans, but they worked. And it shows that 35 years ago, they were also self-sufficient in rice. Unfortunately, that deteriorated, but they busy resuscitating that. I think for another thing that I just want to leave everyone with is the taking advantage of enterprise development, where we can crowd in the FMCG players as well as retailers, where we can create aggregators who will then procure from the smallholder farmers
Sure.
and be able to leverage on scale and supply to this FMCG for further processing, as well as retailers for fresh produce close by. I won't mention the name of a retailer, but they pride themselves by calling themselves local. This because they support the local supplier. So, and I think that's what we need to start tapping into, and that's all about working together. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Rapel. Absolutely insightful, and the case studies and the case in points that you brought into this panel discussion really gave us a template for us to move forward with as a country and as a nation. So thank you so much for that. And we are coming to IDC. So when we knock, don't close the doors, because you told us about the rubbers and the palm oils. We are coming. Mr. Muanda, last remarks from you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Indeed, we are coming to IDC.
Yes.
I think I think the food import bill that the African continent has, I think is somewhere beyond $30 billion a year of food import is totally unnecessary.
Sure.
We can deal with this. We can save this foreign exchange. We have enough agricultural potential on this continent to feed ourselves, to add value and feed the outside world. So what we need to do is, one, to further promote entrepreneurship based on agribusiness. We also need, for financial institutions like the IDC, you have done very well so far, you need to do more to create even better, innovative financial packages suitable for African entrepreneurs to unlock the potential, the agribusiness potential, the enterprise potential from the commodities we currently produce. I think we have talked a lot about public-private partnerships. Maybe we should be talking about country-to-country partnerships in terms of what we already have now. One country is producing so many commodities, perhaps the processing potential is in another country. We can work together there to ensure that commodities are moving, we are creating jobs, we are adding value, and we are feeding ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You are incredible pioneers in your industry. My heart is truly touched and overjoyed that at least there are organizations that are experiencing your light, because like Wangari Maathai would say, the land is the very blood that is in our veins. And if we don't invest in the land and the produce of the land, which is a whole dimension that is beyond us, who are we as humanity? So thank you so much for bringing different perspectives into this conversation. And I truly look forward to engaging with you further, particularly where sustainability in the sector is concerned. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so very much.
And all of the best.
Thank you. Great. Fantastic.
Take care. Thanks.